Started. So good morning, everybody. How are you guys doing? Yeah. That's sleepy. Really thank you guys for being here. Probably out of everyone in this room, I'd be willing to bet I'm the least morning person. So even though I'm operating on East Coast time, this is still real early for me. So I appreciate being here, and I hope the breakfast is good at least. We do have a good panel that we're excited about. We're talking about client communications, which is a really big deal going on right now at this conference, just in the industry in general. I'm actually working on finishing up my next cover story for Investment News. I should say, I'm Ryan Neal. I'm the technology reporter for Investment News. So covering all things that advisors are using in their practice, as well as some of the client-facing stuff and robo-advisors, those sort of things. And anyway, I'm working on my next cover story, interviewing a bunch of successful higher-earning millennials, talking about their experience in the industry. And the spoiler is it has not been good, and communication is a big part of that. So we're here to talk about that today and identify the problems, what are the roadblocks, and maybe get some actionable advice on how to make it better. We're also live streaming this right here in the front, so just be aware of that. So you guys want to introduce yourselves, and then we'll kick it off from there?
Sure. Good morning, my name is Taylor Schulte. I'm actually a native San Diegan, so I commuted down here today, about a 20-30 minute drive. I own a RIA here called Define Financial. I have a marketing podcast for financial advisors called Experiments in Advisor Marketing, and I'm the co-founder of the Advisor Growth Community.
Good morning, my name is Jay Coulter. I have a consulting firm focused on working with independent financial advisors, and I hosted a industry podcast called The Resilient Advisor, and that's actually where we're live streaming this broadcast today on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook.
And he's had much more coffee than I have.
And I'm Sean Brown, and I wish I had Jay Coulter's podcast voice. I am the CEO of YCharts, and for those of you not familiar with YCharts is focused on helping wealth advisors do two things: make better investment decisions and communicate with their clients. And I'm a native Chicago.
Great, guys. Well, I want to start off just at the beginning, simple, and whoever wants to take this first, please feel free. But just what exactly is the problem? I think I can identify it just as a person that looks at advisors, but I want to hear how you define the sort of state of client communications. Like, why is it that?
You want me to start, since I work with a wide array of financial advisors? So when I first started consulting, I got into business to help financial advisors build better portfolios and implement financial planning, because I had identified that as the biggest problem inside the industry. And what I quickly found out is that wasn't the biggest problem inside of advisory firms. And this problem applies to the $25 million shop and the $1 billion plus shop. And the problem is a lot of advisors do not feel like they're taking care of their clients. And there's a simple litmus test question that I ask advisors at the beginning of an engagement that tells me everything. I say, can you tell me right now when your next 5 communications are with your 7th and 11th largest client? And usually there's a deer in the headlight looks because they don't know what it is. And then I ask, do you even know who your 7th and 11th largest clients are? And they typically do not. And that's how they know that there's a problem. They don't understand their book of business, and they don't have a system for communicating.
So the line that Jay was just going down, we're on the phone with advisors every day at YCharts, and we were just hearing this common theme of, what do you do to help communications? And it led us to actually do a survey. We surveyed almost 700 advised individuals, not advisors, but those that are your customers. And the results were pretty astounding. We saw that 2/3 of those surveys said, I very infrequently hear from my advisor. We heard, I want personalized and regular communication. And we heard there are some serious consequences to if you are not communicating well with me. And the survey is available, and if you want to see me after, I can put that in your hands. But I think the big thing, that last category of what are the consequences, was really powerful. It said 2/3 of the people said, I will have less confidence in my financial plan if I'm not communicated with well. Number two, they said I have a higher propensity to seek a different advisor who may communicate better with me. You know, a la that scene from Jerry Maguire where, you know, Jerry Maguire and Cuba Gooding Jr. sitting there having a great relationship, and another all-pro looks over and goes, I want a relationship like that one. The third big consequence was I am less likely to refer my advisor to my family and my friends. And since I think we all know referrals are the #1 source of new business for advisor, it was pretty compelling.
I think I would just add that I think a lot of us started or grew up in the wirehouse world or the insurance world, and we weren't taught to communicate. At least I wasn't taught to communicate. I was taught to sell and bring in business. And so when I started my firm and my practice started getting larger, and I recognized that we were having a communication problem and a client service problem, is when I really had to start to do my homework and hire some real people to teach me how to do this and implement it correctly.
So I think the one word I heard in there that really stood out to me was authenticity. And I think that is going even well beyond the financial advice market. So really everything out there is people are, I think, kind of fed up with, or at least smell the BS. It's sort of like market tested commercials, for example. They want to be talked to like real people. They want to, they want to actually connect. So I think that's important, but obviously advisors have a lot of clients. You can't do that with every single one every single day. It's just not possible. So I guess, the next question there is how do we make it better? How do we improve client communications to, maybe get to some things that I just mentioned?
My quick answer is, I'm served in Chicagoland. I am served, my electric utility is Commonwealth Edison. I hear from Commonwealth Edison, and I actually heard a funny anecdote from another Chicago-based advisor who said, I get better communications from Commonwealth Edison than I do my advisor. Said, hey, I am hearing about LED light bulbs. I am hearing about wind generation as a source of things. I am getting that report that says, here's how you compare to your more efficient. Does anybody get that report? Here's how you compare to your more efficient neighbors. You know what? Strangely, Commonwealth Edison has built a relationship with me. And Ryan, it isn't totally personalized. And what is personalized is very much a digitally enabled thing. So right. The neat thing for me is it's not that hard to get the conversation started. And if an electric utility can build a relationship with me, I'm pretty sure that when you're managing the nest egg of a bunch of hardworking individuals, you can find a way to start that communication.
Sorry, real quick, is that just regular emails that you're getting it, or is it when you log on and pay your bill, or where do you get that?
I get a comment, great, it's a multi-channel approach, right? They've always got me on that paper statement, which, why do I still receive a paper statement? That's probably a different topic. But they get me on emails, and they'll get me, somebody comes out to do a meter reading, and they'll leave an interesting thought piece for an email. And on occasion, I'll get a text. So it's a four-pronged communication channel.
I think on one of our calls when we were prepping for this panel, we said, let's try to disagree with each other a little bit. So one thing I would maybe disagree with, or I don't know whether you agree or not, but don't underestimate the value of snail mail and sending physical pieces of content to your clients. So when I think about communicating with our clients, I kind of break it up into two channels. One is client service and adding value to our clients, and then educational, right? Through blogs, podcasts, social media, all those other elements we can maybe get into a little bit. But when I think about client service, like really, really easy thing for advisors to adopt, we send something called a quarterly value adds. Every single quarter, we mail a physical piece of content to our clients that's customized to them. So for example, in Q1, we all know the tax season comes up in April and clients are starting to think about it in January. So we custody our assets with Fidelity. Fidelity has a report that we can download and funnel into Excel and generate this one pager that will tell our clients what tax documents they're going to receive and for what accounts. So we have this nice one pager that we print out, we send to the client, we give them 2 copies, and on one of the copies we say, give this copy to your CPA, so your CPA knows what tax documents to expect for this year, and then keep this one for yourself. And so we built this system, and it took a little bit to build, but it's a nice, valuable piece of content that we physically mail to every single client that's personalized to them. So every other quarter this year, we'll send a physical piece. Another example is Clients hate estate planning. A lot of them aren't really buttoned up in that department. We have a side letter of instruction template, very, very simple. Like if you do nothing else, complete the side letter of instruction, make copies of it, give it to people in your life that are important to you, put one in your safe, wherever else, put one in your Dropbox folder. So little things like that every single quarter physically has gone a really, really long way for us.
So I've been in the industry for 24 years. I've been consulting for the past 4, and that is the single best idea I've ever heard. And when he shared it on our pre-call, I started telling all my clients to start implementing it because it really takes to the next level what we used to do 20 years ago. That's take out a note card that had our broker dealers heading at the top and write a little note. Hey, looked at your accounts today. Everything looks great. Stick it in the mail for that tactile touch. That's the next level version of that. I look at some of this through the advisor's lens though. And what I've learned helping advisors build systems to communicate with their clients is there needs to be 2 components or else it's not going to work. Number one, it has to be simple, really, really simple, because complex systems for client communication, they just fall apart. I've learned through experience. And the second part is actually the most important, even though it seems glib. The advisor has to want to do it. There are a lot of great turnkey systems out there in the marketplace that you can use to systematize your client communication process. Whether it's the great folks at Snappy Crack and what they have here, or the practice management systems that can help you do it. And I'm not even talking about mine. The folks at the Pareto systems, CEO is here. I'm sure they have a fantastic system. It doesn't matter what system you use, just that you systematize the process, and it's simple enough that you're going to keep doing it, even when things get a little bit hairy in the marketplace, and that way you can stay on track.
So I'm going a little bit off script here, guys. I'm sorry. I tried my best to stay out of it. But my follow-up question there for you is really, so if I feel like I got something in the mail, I would be, come on, man, don't. And I think there's probably different answers for different clients. Maybe some clients, I don't want to stereotype anybody by either age or demographic, but some clients might prefer a more traditional communication style, something in the mail, maybe a call, whereas other clients may like, just send me an email, let me know how I'm doing. So how much do you have to know what your clients want, and do you have to build different systems to hit all these people, or can we automate some of it to maybe reach all those different touch points?
I think on that point, in that survey I mentioned, we actually asked for the different channels that the people who were advised were amenable to. And it was really interesting. There was a clear perforation between those under 50 years old and those over 50 years old. And I happen to be over 50 years old. But the basically said a lot of the old school channels, the paper mail and email, are what over 50s want to be receiving. The younger generation was saying no. Like a real appetite for all the things we see our kids or our neighbors' kids doing now. Facebook, LinkedIn, a lot of the social media channels, including texting. So multi-channel, to get that really personalized, it's an easy communication to have with your clients. To say what communication works best for you. I know in my marriage, what works best for us is a Sunday night sit down over a glass of wine to say, let's talk about our future, let's talk about things we can improve on. That's based on a channel that works for us. But I think, Ryan, there isn't one answer to that. There may be some statistical things that say over 50, under 50, but how hard is it to just have a communication with your 100 clients and say, what is the best channel for me to communicate with you?
Sure.
I mean, I guess I would just say that, when's the last time any of us received a high quality piece of content, like a really valuable piece of content? It's really rare these days, because I think it's just a really easy way to stand out if you do send something of extreme value. But to your point, I do think like one way that we could level up and do this a little bit better is to send that physical piece of content and then follow it up a week later or a few days later with the same thing but digitally. Hey, we just sent you X, Y, and Z in the mail a few days ago. Hope it was helpful. Here's a digital copy as well in case that's helpful too. So you give me an idea to step it up a little bit.
Also, great advice for any PR folks out there. The digital follow-ups are always good.
So I guess anecdotally, as someone that works with a lot of advisors, I try to network with attorneys that specialize in helping advisors get out of trouble when the government comes knocking. And there's one in particular who once a quarter sends me a hard copy mailing. It comes in the mail. I don't even open it up, but I know who it came from. I know there's great content in there, and whenever one of my clients gets in trouble, I exclusively refer to that particular attorney. So I really do see the value in that tactile touch. And I'd also suggest, in addition to looking at the channels in which you're communicating, segmenting your clients can have a real impact. And to make myself seem smarter, I'm going to quote research out of the University of Oxford. A gentleman named Robin Dunbar did a study, and in it he found that the average human can only maintain about 150 real relationships. And it was an anthropological study, and it has to do with the size of our brain. So Taylor and Sean can have more friendships than I can have, but on average, you can really only keep about 150 real relationships. So as you segment your book of business and your communication strategy, it's important to don't benchmark to the 150, but some of your higher end clients, some of your larger clients might need a little bit more of a higher cadence as it relates to communications.
But I also think we need to take the pressure off of what is success in communication, because you were mentioning a piece of mail that arrives and you see the upper left corner of the envelope in the paper mail, or you see the email subject line of who sent it. That's success right there. You don't have to open that thing to know that sender was thinking of me. And like I said, maybe it goes in a digital stack or a paper stack, but I heard from my advisor this week or this month, and thank you. They were thinking about me, so now I'm thinking about them. So that when they get solicitations from other advisors, or they're sitting at a dinner party saying, hey, I have nobody managing my money, you have any suggestions? That you're in the lawyer moment where you go, I have a great advisor who is in regular touch with me. You know what, I haven't opened that big stack of stuff they've sent me lately, but I know it's there and I know there's something.
The only thing I want to add on that, and I don't have data to back this up, just from anecdotal evidence of interviewing a bunch of highly successful millennials for this project that I'm working on, not a single one of them told me I want digital communication. Every single person I interviewed was about, I want to say a half dozen families, some single, some married. Every one of them said, I want to meet them in person at least once, and I want to talk to them at least over video chat. They wanted that face-to-face communication. I was kind of shocked. I didn't get a single person saying, no, whatever, email's just fine. I had one guy said that he gets a monthly email about his investments and his positions, and like a quick checkup saying, you should be here, but you're here. And he says sometimes he looks at it, sometimes he doesn't, but he gets that monthly email. Everyone else I talked to wants that person-to-person thing, and that's not just me pandering to you guys. I was really shocked by that. But I want to move on a little bit to the obstacles. So we've talked about what maybe good client communication should look like. We talked about where we are. So what's preventing us? What's that roadblock in the way that's preventing the industry from being much better at this? Anybody? Yeah. Whoever wants to go.
So I have boots on the ground experience with this, and the biggest challenge is getting commitment to change management. In fact, there was a panel yesterday, the gentleman from Hightower and Dynasty. Yes, they talked about the challenge of change management, especially with advisors that are seasoned. They don't want to use CRM. They don't want to leverage technology. I know that concept probably doesn't resonate to folks here at T3, but I really struggle to get advisors to adopt a CRM system to manage their client communications. I really struggle to get to go and work with some type of marketing communications provider where they have to do some work. So delivering that change management, implementing technology, and adopting throughout the firm is the biggest challenge.
And my answer is, we've been in an 11-year bull market, and I think our communication scenes have been forgiven. When that quarterly statement comes, it has been going upwards and to the right, and there hasn't been an impetus or catalyst for change. And so people are able to fall back on good excuses like inertia. I don't know how to get started. I don't have the time. Gee, how am I tripping any regulatory wires? And long and short is it says I don't really have the motivation, so I have a bunch of reasons I haven't gotten started.
One thing that I've learned about myself and about most advisors is that we don't want to do the hard work, and that we kind of jump ahead in a lot of this. So my example would be, I just shared this value add example of sending this one-page tax report to clients. A lot of advisors will jump to, okay, let me go download this report, put together this one pager, and they'll go kind of jump straight to the beginning of the end of the process. where I'd say sit down with your team, adopt a CRM system if you don't have one, start to think about what that process looks like, build the actual workflow that's going to power this quarterly value add that you're going to send out before you go jump to build the thing and go into Excel and do, what I would say, kind of the fun stuff. Nobody wants to do the hard work behind the scenes that allows you to actually scale this process and make it repeatable. And that's something that I learned about myself. And so now I force myself to actually put a workflow together before we ever adopt anything in the practice.
I think that work takes away from golf time, so, I don't know. But yeah, no, I think you're right. And then another thing I've heard from advisors too, when you do adopt like a CRM system, you have to be vigilant on how to update it. You can't just throw some information for some client, some information for another client. If you want to get the most out of it, you gotta have that. Do everything right, keep that data clean, etc. But also, what about regulation or regulators, compliance, any of that stuff? Is that still a roadblock that advisors have to deal with, or has technology smoothed the road out for the most part? Or do you not need to worry about things, or is there?
I think there are plenty of examples out there of people on social media that are in our space with 1 million followers who are regularly putting out broadcast communication. Here's some perspectives on jobs reports. Here's some perspectives on inflation. Here's some perspectives on mutual funds that have high exposure to China. Here is my perspective of what my client should be thinking about when the 10-2 yield curve spread gets inverted. There's some people that have crossed the boundaries that I think a lot of other advisors are concerned about. I would say with a special exception, I think people who are regulated by FINRA need to tread a little bit more carefully than those that aren't. But it's a realistic concern, but I also think this is not, the wheel does not need to be reinvented on what can and can't be done.
So let's look at 2 extreme examples. The first would be Josh Brown of Untitled Wealth Management. If you don't know him, go look at all the content he puts out. That's on one extreme. And then look at most financial advisors that do nothing. And take the hypothetical advisor who has a LinkedIn profile, maybe a profile picture, a Facebook page they don't do anything with, and maybe a Twitter handle. That advisor's clients are being marketed to like tech-savvy advisors, like Taylor and his firm, on a regular basis. They're getting in their feeds, they're downloading checklists, they're downloading reports, they're getting on their email list, and when they click on those buttons, they end up on that tech-savvy advisor's Facebook page. And then they think, well, what is my advisor doing? They go and they click on their advisor's Facebook page and there's nothing there. It's an image issue. So the questions around compliance. Compliance rules haven't gotten softer. The understanding of compliance rules have gotten better. And that's what's really helped advisors. I don't want to push the needle to the wrong term, but move into an era of being able to market digitally in a compliant way.
And update your website, folks. Like seriously, it may sound basic, but if your website still at least looks like it's from 97 or it is from 97, just the reality is I see a lot of it. And I can tell you from any of my friends, and I'm 32, a lot of my friends are doing very well or about my age, are looking for financial advisors, and they'll search for one, click on a website, and if it doesn't look like someone has cared at all, they're gonna move on to one that has. If you can't take that bit of time, and everyone else has, it means something. It may not sound like a lot, but it means something. It really does.
I couldn't agree more. 75% of our new business comes through local, organic Google search. So our ideal client, our niche is over the age of 50, $1 million plus. And these people are finding us by going to Google and typing in San Diego Financial Advisor, San Diego Financial Planner. We have very, very good organic visibility, and they're coming to our website. And again, we've done the hard work so that when they land on our website, we make it really, really easy for them to identify, am I in the right place? Is this someone that has the expertise to solve the problem that I have? And then if so, what's the very first step? How can I contact this firm, even if it's Saturday at midnight or Sunday at 6 in the morning? So you're right, but it's not just building the website and paying somebody $10,000, but again, it's doing the hard work to make sure that when you do all this great marketing stuff, somebody lands on your website, that you're not missing out on giant opportunities. Make it really, really easy for these consumers, and it works.
That's a great point, and you also touched on something that I was hinting at later, and I don't know if I expressed it the best, but that don't assume that you're doing this for millennials. Older customers, everyone Google searches everything now. Everybody's texting. I think kind of these old mentalities that young people may want this, older people want that. And there's definitely the data supporting that, as Sean mentioned. But don't just use that as an assumption, saying older people don't want that because they do, or that young people don't want stuff in the mail because some do. We really got to even talk to them and I think. But I guess the final question I had for you guys is, or not final, I'm not sure. So what's the solution? How do we help advisors get there? We talked about the problem, we talked about what we want to see, we talked about some of the roadblocks. So what's next? How can these folks here go out and get on that path to having better communication right now? What's something they can do?
I would start really simple. I think a lot of people, take social media, for example. Okay, we need to get into the social media game, and you'll see advisors go to Facebook, to LinkedIn, to Twitter, and try to do all of it at once. And it's really impossible to do everything really well. So, right now Jay has LinkedIn Live set up. It's a really good example of just doing one thing really simply. Jay can take this video and repurpose it into 50 different pieces of content. So when you think about educating clients and creating content for clients or potential clients, you can take one piece of content, he can scrape the audio, turn this into a podcast, he can send it to a creative writer to then turn it into a blog post. He can chop it up into a bunch of different short videos to publish on YouTube or Instagram stories. Like, it's endless. So when you think about creating content, you don't think about trying to do all of this stuff and go on YouTube and start a podcast and start a blog. What's the one thing that you really enjoy doing? If you really enjoy writing, that's great, write, and then hire people outsourced to repurpose that content into other mediums. And the same thing can be said for client service. Like, pick one thing. If you like this quarterly idea, like, commit to that and do it for a full year, and then start to stack other things on top of it. Now you give me this idea, hey, we could actually couple that with some digital communications as well. So start simple, start with one thing, and then kind of build from there.
And I first of all, I agree hugely with one of the things you said, which is commit. Once you get out there, one of the worst things you can do is, say I'm going to produce a monthly market perspective, and then after 2 months, it's not seen anymore. So commit. But the big thing I would encourage is take a moment and be introspective about what you do today. Look at your communications along 2 dimensions. Like the Y dimension is, what do you broadcast? What goes out to everybody? And then what do you narrowcast? What do you do that's very personalized for an individual? And then look at the cadence that you do it as another dimension. What do I do that's ad hoc? And what do I do that's planned every month, every quarter? And take a look at where you are and plot the communications you have in that framework. It's a 2x2 matrix, and again, we've got this online if you want to see a picture and use it for yourself. Look at what you're doing today, and then think about your end state. Your end state, some perfect ethereal end state where you'll be in 5 years. But then, like Taylor's saying, take a baby step. Find that thing that inspires you in one of those quadrants and say, I'm going to get better in my ad hoc broadcast communications, which means when something happens in the market, I'm going to try to get my perspective out there. Hey, coronavirus, what stocks might that affect? You know what, that may not be relevant to my client portfolio, but it did say that my advisor understands markets and understands finance. When something comes up and the tax code changes and there's something relevant to it, put it out there. I just tweeted something out 2 days ago saying, there's a lot of debate about how much do companies pay in taxes versus individuals. I did a quick, using a product I know well by YCharts, I did a quick search and said the average of the top 10 in Russell 1000, the average company pays an effective tax rate of 17%. The average individual in the United States, 14.2%. You know what? That took me literally 2 minutes to get that data and broadcast it out. But I just said my personal goal is to communicate more often on this ad hoc broadcast type of messaging. Long answer, which says know where you are today, know where you want to be, and just take baby steps to get there.
Alex, quick question I want to throw to you. Is there a bit of like a sort of a golden rule thing? You do it to others, you do it yourself, or whatever that's at. Maybe can you look at how would I want to be communicated to by an advisor and try to replicate that in your own strategy?
Yeah, maybe a slightly different answer to that question is the first thing I would do if I was sitting in the audience and not comfortable with what I was doing from a marketing standpoint is go look at Taylor's website. He just told you that 75% of his new business comes from organic SEO. I'm a big believer in modeling what the best in the business do. They've already done it. They probably paid teams a lot of money to figure out what the code is to get it done and start from there.
Yeah. How much time do we have, by the way?
Got about 15 minutes.
Oh, great. Then something we didn't get to ask about that I'd love to is about texting. There's so much excitement about texting, there's so much fear about texting and compliance and how is that all going to work. But is anybody in the audience staying at the Embassy Suites? I bet you are. Did you get the text from Wally?
I got a text from someone, and I do every time I stay at an Embassy Suites.
Yeah, I'm 90% sure this is automated, but we got a thing. So, good evening, Mr. Neal. Welcome to the Embassy Suites San Diego. Go green with us. Blah, blah, blah. They advertise their voucher if you go green. And then the next day, just checking in. How's your stay so far? Reply back 1 to 10. I don't respond because, I don't know, I get annoyed by stuff. But, I mean, I find it fascinating. Like, this hotel has this great communication strategy. Is that something that advisors could consider and start doing? Maybe something a little less automated than that, but what do you guys think?
I love text-based communication. The challenge is every advisor's compliance rules are different. There's some great tech providers here today that can help you do it in a compliant way. So it would seem to me that would be effective, but you wouldn't want to be spammy with it. As a non-practicing advisor, I think Taylor probably has a better lens.
I think I would just say don't be distracted by shiny objects. I think there's a huge opportunity in texting from a marketing standpoint or a client service standpoint. But if you haven't nailed down all the basics, don't jump to texting to go to solve all of your problems. I think you do need to nail down the basics, creating these workflows, creating these systems, getting in the habit of sending some physical pieces of content, publishing educational content on a regular basis. And then I think you can start to take things to the next level and implement texting. I would just be careful about being distracted by a shiny object and thinking that's going to solve all of your problems.
The one thing I'd say though, in the audience, Danny, I see you over there. I saw a post from Danny Fava of
On the phone, too.
TD Ameritrade, and she basically said every advisor should get into the podcast game. And it's not that hard. Like literally, Jay just set up the equivalent of a podcast. It's a computer, it's some lighting, and it's a microphone. And there are some great ways. Again, in the shiny object, I agree with that definitely in theory. But if there is an object or something you're not doing that you want to do, it's so easy now to do it. And in fact, I know a lot of advisors. Like Taylor, like you're saying, hey, SEO is important. Here's how I go after San Diego people with over $1 million. There are a lot of really generous advisors out there who have lists of the equipment you need to get started with this or the best practices. I think the days of advisors all viewing each other as competitors, there's a huge market of unserved, unadvised individuals out there. There is so much content out there on how to tap into, whether it's texting or anything.
Yeah, I think, personally, just from my standpoint as a consumer, I really would not like my financial advisor to send Wally-esque texts. Like this hotel did saying, did you enjoy your visit yesterday? Text 1 through 10. No, you're like, go away. But what I would really like the ability to do is, for example, the coronavirus example. I'm freaked out. I'm hearing these stories about China. Apple says their sales are down. If I could send a text to somebody and say like, hey, should I be worried about my portfolio right now? Do I need to check my investments? Yes or no, text back. That's awesome, I think. I really like the ability to do that. Which is another question I'd like to bring up at any time is, we've talked a lot about the advisor broadcasting part. What about the other mode of communication, the clients coming in? Does that need to be improved or changed in any way and how clients can get a hold of their advisors if they come to these digital areas?
Gosh, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know if I understand the question exactly, but I guess being available and responding as quickly as possible is really important to us. I mean, we don't want to miss a phone call. I was like, no phone goes unanswered. Like I hate when something goes to voicemail. So being extremely accessible to our clients, we're managing their entire financial life here. So yeah, I guess just being as accessible as possible to clients. But outside of phone and email, I can't think of any way for clients to contact us.
There is a dynamic that you touch on, though, which is communication begets communication, right? And I hear a lot of advisors say, well, the more I touch my clients, the more they're gonna expect back from me. And honestly, I don't have enough hours in a day to respond to 100 clients saying, oh, as a follow-up to that point you made to me. I think it's all meant for balance, and understanding that you are not going to get 100% of the people you reach out to coming back to you. The yield you will probably see, the number that opens is probably in the 10 to 15% range. The number who react is probably less than half of that. So I guess my rule of thumb would be, if you're sending out something broadcast and you expect to potentially hear back with some questions on 5 to 7%, and you send it out to 100, that's 5 to 7 people. Can you find time in your day to respond back? Great point, or let me get back to you next week on that message received? I think we can find time for that.
Maybe I can give you just a little bit better answer. I think it goes back to, again, having these systems in place. So I think about, we meet with our clients twice a year, in the month of May, just after tax season, and in October, just before the holidays hit. And that process entails us sending a physical letter to them saying, hey, we have a meeting block coming up in May. Keep an eye out for an email from us in 2 weeks. In that email, we send them, we use Acuity scheduling to allow them to schedule their annual or their biannual meeting with us. So I guess, to answer your question, making it really, really easy for them to see my calendar, pick a time in May that works really, really well for them, and not have to go back and forth via email comparing calendars or calling our office and Karen trying to coordinate with me and my schedule, making it really, really, really easy for them to schedule that meeting.
Yeah, I love those pieces of software. Another best practice that I've seen be very impactful for advisors is to have 2 email addresses. So for example, you might have jane.smith@ABC Financial, and that's what all the wholesalers and vendors and everybody else has. And once somebody goes through your client onboarding process, give them Jane@ABC Financial. Tell them not to share it, and then set up your Outlook or Google folder so that those get priority. That can really cut down on the amount of email clutter you have and improve your communication.
I just meant that I think the thought came from, I remember years ago when T3 was all about digital advice, how we're going to implement some of those technologies. One of the concerns I was hearing from advisors was, well, if we open up and we can self-onboard and digitize and automate, and I can be hearing from clients at 2 in the morning, I don't think anyone wants to talk to a client at 2 in the morning. But do we need to update, I guess, the industry for that more like kind of all connected, new, people can communicate with Amazon anytime they want, more or less. Do advisors need to think about that? Maybe is that a role for chatbots, or are we thinking too far ahead?
In my experience, it's a little bit too far ahead. Being available 24/7 is important for your clients. At the same time, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And setting those boundaries can be important, especially if you're in the mass affluent market. You have 800 families in your book of business. That can become really tough to manage.
I also think about it like there's this conversation going on in the industry that we're not a profession, right? Like, how do we become a profession? I don't expect to get a hold of my neurologist at midnight on a Saturday, right? I don't expect her to text me back. And so if I think we want to be viewed as a profession, we have to act professional, and responding to an email Saturday at noon is just not something that I would personally do. It also depends on what type of practice you're running. If you're running a high volume practice, if you're a betterment or a wealth fund or something like that, where you're serving hundreds of thousands of families, then I think the expectation is different. But we work with 60 high net worth families in Southern California. I think we're viewed more as a professional than as a high volume service provider.
That makes sense. You want to add anything?
I'll just keep coming back to common law medicine. I have about a $2,500 per year relationship with Commonwealth Edison. They found a way to touch me. I have a feeling the fees you are generating off of each and every one of your clients, I'd ask you to compare and say, what kind of communication can you get in place with them? And whether that means you have boundaries on a Saturday afternoon or not, I agree that you should have some service level agreement. that you commit to and maybe communicate to your clients that says all emails or calls, I'm busy meeting with some other clients or working on your behalf to rebalance your portfolio today, but I will get back to you within 24 hours.
Great, and by the way, we have I think about a few minutes left. Do we have any questions from the audience? Would you guys like to ask our panel anything or ask me anything? Okay, well, keep that in mind. You can think about it.
I'll share one little thing that you might consider adopting. We took it from Carolyn McClanahan out in Florida. She created something called client engagement standards. And so we basically took her client engagement standards and we made it our own. And it's about a 3 or 4 page document. And at the very end of I'll call it our sales process, when we're going through a prospective client, if they say, we want to hire you, we want to move forward, the very first thing that we ask them to do is to take home our client engagement standards. It's a physical piece of paper with a paid return envelope. They read through it. It outlines our guiding principles and values of our firm. It outlines their expectations line by line. They have to initial next to every single one of these statements. One of them, for example, is if you drop by our office on a day that we don't have client meetings, we might be in casual. Right? I might be wearing a polo and not a suit and tie. We're going to respond on Monday through Friday to your communications within the same business day, right? If you contact us on Saturday, you're not going to hear from us until Monday. And so outlining these expectations and having them sign off on them, and then there's also our expectations as well that we initial and all sign off on. So before anything formal, any formal agreements are signed, that's the very first thing that we have the client sign, and that really helps get everybody aligned from a communication standpoint. Before we even start engaging in any other kind of planning process.
And one thing I just want to add, this is totally self-serving, and I apologize up front, but when you mentioned, for example, getting your voice out there, broadcasting, if there's something big in the markets, if you want to get your own perspectives, call me, call Investment News. All the reporters are very easy to reach. If it's a tech story you'd like to comment on, call me. If it's an investment story, our guy Jeff Benjamin out there, if it's a broker-dealer story, or my man Bruce Kelly. I swear we're not scary. You can call us anytime. And we love getting advisor perspectives. Advisors are our readers in Investment News. We serve you. And the more we can get a diverse viewpoint on big stories, we love it. And a lot of times we start using some of the same voices over and over. You guys might have noticed that. We don't like doing that, and I'm sure people don't like reading it. So if you guys have a viewpoint you want to share, send me an email, give me a call. I might not be able to respond because I get a lot of them, but if it's something interesting and you guys are someone new, we would love to feature you. So just keep that in mind as a way to broadcast yourself, I guess. So in closing up, any other sort of final bits of advice that you guys would like to share for our audience here?
I would just say the common theme I'm hearing from things is learn from others. You are not paving new ground. Learn from others. Ryan put an offer out there. If you ever want to be pointed to who we think are best in class in the advisor space on broadcast or narrowcast, ad hoc or scheduled communication, let us know. Learn from others. They're happy to teach you, happy to share their insights with you, and take baby steps. Move into it. Don't try to be perfect tomorrow, but whatever you roll out, commit to it.
I guess one takeaway would be to keep things really, really simple, and that goes to what you said. The results come from simple systems.
Content is king, so in one way, shape, or form, you need to figure out how to create content for your clients and prospective clients. And again, it can be as simple as a weekly newsletter that's 200 words, but I think you need to find something that you're good at and that you enjoy doing and be consistent with it, and then hire other people to help you repurpose that content into other mediums.
Great, guys. Well, thank you. I think that wraps it up, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you guys so much.